Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of The Walking Dead. Well, no, not really. Hello and welcome to toy-polloi. But as you can see here in front of me, we have the latest toy in for a bit of a restoration, and it is a vintage 1970s action man who has certainly seen some action. And really, he does look like he should be an extra, or at least a main character in The Walking Dead, because this guy has really had some serious damage done to him over the years. So let's take a closer look and see what we have and whether at all this can be restored. So as you can see, it is a non-eagle eyes action man, but it is a flocked haired version of an action man, and he should have the gripping hands. But at some point in his long and varied life, something serious has happened to him, and he's been absolutely covered in paint. It looks like enamel paint to me, because it sort of chips off underneath. It's hard to tell what he's going to be like, but really that's the challenge for today, is to see whether I can actually get this figure back to looking anything like an action man. I have to say, this is probably one of the hardest challenges I've ever seen or tried to do here at toy-polloi, and I'm really not sure whether this will ever turn out like a decent toy again. But I can't leave a toy like this just to be chucked in the bin, and I think that's probably what would have happened to this if I hadn't come along and picked it up. So first thing I think we've got to do is take him apart. He's a little bit on the floppy side, which means all of the elastic inside has sort of perished, but that's good, because really the only way we're going to get to actually clean him is if we can get him into pieces. So let's take him apart and see if he can be saved, because really I would quite like to save him, because I do like these flocked bearded versions. The head is probably the hardest bit to fix. I think we can do the body relatively easy, but I'm not quite sure what at all I'm going to do for the head. So let's get started. So yeah, the first thing I want to do is actually just to strip this down to sort of all component parts, and these vintage action men are pretty easy to deal with, as I've shown you many times before, and they're relatively easy to sort of string and re-elasticate. And as you can see, the elastic on the arms of this one are pretty loose, so I'm just going to take a scalpel and cut through the elastic so that we can take his arms off, like so. You can see here, you can now start sort of unpicking bits of the metal work and stuff that holds it together. So I'm going to put these bits of metal to one side. I have a little tray here to keep them, and I think once we've got this down to the smallest parts, then we can start trying to clean it. So I can pull out the other arm here, and again there's the old bit of perished elastic, and we can just unhook the bit of metal. So that's the first two arms, and we can do the same for his legs, which hold everything on really. If we cut the elastic in the middle, his legs should come off and his head should come off, and that would be a good start. So let's just cut through that one. There we go. So there's his legs off, and we can see every single part has been pretty fully covered in paint. So it's really going to be quite a challenge to get this looking half decent. Again, there's the other leg with the other bit of elastic. The pelvis, again, completely painted. There's a little bit of paint on the inside even as well, so it's obviously really someone had a very good go at painting this. There's his torso, and if we pull that out, there's also the bit of metal that holds his head on, so we can unhook that as well. And there we have Action Man in his component parts ready for cleaning. Now Action Man is in quite a few small pieces. We can start trying to clean him. I think the way I'm going to do this is, if you've watched some of my recent videos, you'll have seen me clean some enamel paint off a vintage Mattel Cylon, and I use brake fluid for that, and that does work quite well. And I have to say, I think that this paint also looks like the same sort of enamel paint that was used on that Cylon. So this could be sort of old Humbrol enamel paints or something like that. It's quite thick and sort of quite, if you can get a knife under it, you can sort of peel it off, but it really has stuck quite well. So I think the first thing to do is to try some of the brake fluid, and I'm just going to stick a few pieces of this in that and see what happens, and hopefully it should sort of loosen up and come off. The worst piece is this head, because I've never tried dunking the flock in brake fluid, and it may be that it sort of dissolves the glue that holds that flock in place, and also it's going to remove the paint that's used for his eyes here. But yeah, I'm really not quite sure what I'm going to do for that, but really I think I might just have to risk it and stick that in. Worst case is I have a spare head and I can swap the head out, but let's see if we can try and get some of this looking half decent. So let's start by putting a few pieces in brake fluid and seeing what happens. So I've got a plastic container here, and I have some Halford's sort of universal brake and clutch fluid, and this is .4. Apparently you can use cheaper stuff, but this is one I just happen to have, and I've used this a few times before, so it's already got some bits of paint and old sort of debris in it, but it still works. It's always worth keeping this stuff. Don't just chuck it away. So I think first off, I'll stick in the pelvis, I'll stick in one of the sort of hip joints and maybe an arm, and just see what happens, because the arms have some extra bits in them. They've got some bits of metal and stuff in them, but I thought the brake fluid will be fine on that, because that's brake fluid is not supposed to be corrosive. So let's put those bits in, and I will pour in the brake fluid. Make sure they're covered. Well, you can see actually that hip joint floats, so I might have to move that about a bit. Actually, they all sort of start to float a bit. And you can see the bits of old paint. That's actually the blue paint from the Cylon that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to leave those in there for maybe an hour and a half, and come back to it, and we'll see if that started to make any difference. This brake fluid tends to work actually quite quickly, an hour to an hour and a half, and you should start seeing some progress. And if this works, we'll then move on to doing the rest of the body and see if we can get this Action Man cleaned up. I've got my fingers crossed. After 2 hours in the brake fluid, I took the items out for their first clean, and I used just some hot water and a toothbrush to try and scrape away as much of the paint as I could. And really in 2 hours quite a lot had already come loose. The paint had been quite thickly applied, so it's going to take a few goes to get the sort of full sort of multiple layers of paint off, but I was actually pretty pleased at how well the first round of cleaning went. So I then put it back in the brake fluid and left it for another couple of hours, and this is the sort of couple of hours later after that. As you can see, I've already managed to clean up the hip joints quite nicely. These have come pretty clean. There's a lot of dirt and grime left on them, but all of the paint really has sort of come away. There's still a few little bits. If you see where the bits of the plastic have been sort of welded together, you get a few bits of paint in this sort of join line, and actually just taking a screwdriver or even a little toothpick or something, you can actually scrape that paint away. So I'm going to do a sort of second pass on these once I've got all the bits clean, but you can see that has come out pretty nicely. I've done the other hip joint as well. The sort of plastic has a little bit of red staining to it still, but I think with a little bit more cleaning we should be able to get that sort of looking sort of pretty reasonable. If you compare it to the first bit that hasn't been done, you can see that is quite a difference already. So let's take a couple of bits out of this brake fluid and I'll show you how I sort of clean them in more detail. So I have some kitchen towel here. This is really just to absorb any of the brake fluid that's left on the part. So if I just sort of fold that, put that down, and then I'm going to take out the pelvis section, which is one that I'd already started cleaning. So I'll just use a screwdriver just to sort of hold it out and hopefully drip off as much of the brake fluid as we can, because we can obviously use that again. You can see it's going quite red. The paint is sort of staining the brake fluid, but that's all right. So there's the pelvis. You can see the first round that I did on it, I managed to get most of the paint off. So just take another couple of bits of kitchen towel. You should be able to just rub at the paint, and you can see it just comes away. It really does loosen up quite quickly. And just sort of rub it and clean it. And any bits that are a little bit tough, you can just take a screwdriver to, and it sort of picks away a bit. It's certainly loosened it up a whole load. And then once these are sort of predominantly clean, you can then just wash them in just hot soapy water. But most of it should just rub off with a bit of kitchen towel like this. And this is quite an oily job. Obviously, yeah, the brake fluid is fairly oily, so you do get a little bit of a mess. But that is half the fun of cleaning these toys. So you can see if I can pair this, both of these bits were painted exactly the same way. That is quite a big difference from how it started. And I reckon I'm pretty pleased with how this is going. So I'm sort of very hopeful that we'll be able to get all of this toy looking half decent. It's never going to look perfect, but it's certainly going to be quite a presentable toy. So I'm going to carry on, work my way through all of these pieces. I've still got the legs to do, as you can see, and then the face, which we'll come on to in a bit, because I have an idea of how we can do that. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with how this is going. It's just a slow process. As you see, this has taken about 4 hours to get this far, and we've got quite a few bits to do, so it's going to carry on for a good few days, I reckon. So I think that is all the parts done for the moment. It's all going to go back in the brake fluid. You can see a few bits are looking pretty nice actually. I've started taking this sort of more fully apart just so that I can get into all the sort of nooks and crannies. There's a few little bits left, but overall it's looking a whole lot better, and as you can see it doesn't make quite a mess. My hands are absolutely covered in the remnants of this red paint. So I split up the legs now, they're all in there. Once those are done, then the last big bit to do is the torso, which is just going to have to be done in a sort of a few goes, but I'm hoping that that will turn out just as good as the pelvis, you can see there. So it's just a very sort of patient waiting game. You've just got to do bits one at a time, leave them in for a couple of hours, then give them a good clean and do it again, and it will come in the end. So I'm just going to take this one apart, put it in the brake fluid again, and we'll come back in a few hours and do the whole process again. Right, well, another couple of hours have passed and it looks like I'm actually getting some progress here with what I'm working on. I've taken the time to give the bits that I've sort of already cleaned in the brake fluid another good sort of wash, and I've just used hot soapy water and a dish sponge which has a sort of coarse surface on one side. It's not really abrasive, but it's just a little bit sort of rough, and that's taken off, as you can see, pretty much all the paint off the pelvis section there, and even these two sort of hip balls are now looking an awful lot better. Some of the paint seems to be really sort of ground in just to the sort of the join lines. You can see where the sort of two edges or the two surfaces of the ball are joined together, and I'm finding that a knife or just a sort of something with a slightly sort of sharper edge is needed just to sort of scrape those bits out. You can see it just sort of catches in there, but it's a sort of a slow process on those, but it really does make quite a difference. Also, you can see I have the right arm all clean. Again, a little bit of paint is sort of catching in some of the fine moulded sort of lines that are in the plastic here, and again I think I might do another sort of second scrub on that just to see if I can get rid of it, but overall it's all looking a whole lot better than it did when I first had it. So now we might as well start having a look at these other bits that have had another 2 hour soak here. So I'm just going to move away the parts that I have going to class as done for the moment. Again, I've got a little bit of kitchen towel here just to catch the sort of runoff. We'll put those two bits to one side as well, that's the next stage. And we can go in here. I'm going to fish out just one part at a time and again work my way through. Same process as before, so wipe it down and then give it a good clean. So you can see there is one of the new calf pieces that I've put in. You can see it is straight away, the paint is coming off. So another bit of kitchen towel here. Let's just start rubbing this off. Some of these limbs are really very thickly coated in paint, which means it is going to take a few goes to get all of this removed. There's no quick way of doing this. Really, look, you can see the amount that's coming off. It's quite revolting. At this point I'm sort of thinking to myself, is this really worth it? Because it's turning out to be an awful lot of work, but I just can't give up. I've come so far and I really think that we can get everything looking like this. So here are the bits from the brake fluid. Again, as you can see, some of them have cleaned up better than others. There's quite a few bits sort of left on, but they're starting to look more like Action Man should. So before I put these back in the brake fluid, I've already given them a sort of a wash under some hot soapy water. I'm going to try and pick out a few more of the sort of ingrained bits. So you can see here on this foot there's quite a few pieces sort of stuck between his toes. Now if I use a toothpick or even a screwdriver, I should be able to sort of pick some of those pieces out. You'll see if I just run the toothpick along, it does start to come out, and that should ease off or make it a lot easier for the brake fluid to work in the next time if I try and clear out as much of these pieces as possible. You can see if you just sort of rub on the surface, the toothpick's not actually going to do much to the plastic, but you can scrape out a lot of these sort of little hard to reach pieces. So you can see that's already looking a bit better. So I'm just going to give a quick sort of rub over all of these pieces, and then I'll put them back in the brake fluid for another couple of hours, and I reckon by that time all of these pieces should look as good as the other bits that I've managed to clean up completely. And I could just give them a quick wash in some hot soapy water and another rub over with the sort of dish sponge to get the final pieces out. But you can see this actually gets off quite a lot more it just takes quite a while because there's so many sort of fiddly little gaps that you have to get into. But now I'm doing it, it's quite good fun, and I really do want to see this Action Man looking, well, not as good as new, but certainly as displayable again. You can see that's got quite a few bits out on his foot. So I'm going to get all of these into this sort of condition, and then we'll put them back in the brake fluid and we'll wait again. Well, it's taken about 20 minutes to try and clean these up. As you can see, some are still looking pretty rough. There's an awful lot of paint left on these thighs and that calf, but some bits, as you can see, this is the forearm, is really not a great deal left on it. So another soak in the brake fluid for, I'm going to say, another 2 hours. You can see this calf still has quite a bit on it, and that should loosen up these last bits. Then I can give those a thorough clean. Then that just leaves the body and the head. Now the body is going to be an easy one because really we're just going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to dunk that in and leave it for 2 hours. It may be that I have to do it in a few goes because it's so big, it's not actually going to sit in the brake fluid that I have here, but that should still clean up nicely, and then we can work on this separately and see what we can do. I really do hope I can save that. And I'm getting more hopeful now that I've seen how much I can remove from the body. The only problem is going to be whether the brake fluid actually takes the hair off as well, but we'll just have to see what happens with that. So let's get these bits back into the brake fluid and we'll wait for another 2 hours. I'm really starting to get somewhere now. As you can see, most bits are actually looking flesh coloured and pretty much like they should do originally. There's still a few little bits sort of in the very fine sort of detailing and scratching on the legs, but really it is quite minute now compared to what it was originally. So the last big part to do is this chest piece, and I'm going to leave this in overnight because I'm going to have to sort of put it in half and half, and I think this will take a good few goes as well because the paint is really thick. And then that's all the body sections done, and then we can move on to the head. But really let's get this last body section done, then I can put the whole body back together as well, and it will start to actually look like an Action Man again. So we'll get this back in the brake fluid. As you can see, my brake fluid now is a really nice shade of red. It was more sort of yellowy when it started, but I guess that's the paint dissolving into it. So we'll just drop that in there and let that sink down to the bottom. I'm just going to use my screwdriver to try and get that as coated as possible. It's not really going to fit. This pot is just not quite big enough, so I'm going to have to turn this over a few times as I go, but that's alright, just takes that little bit longer. As this was such a sort of thickly coated piece, I've actually left it in overnight, so it's had about 10 hours inside here, and it already looks like it's coming off. You can see that the paint is pretty much sort of just dropping off it, so I'm hoping this one will just take one go now that it's been in there for so long, and then we can start putting the figure back together and looking at his head. So it's just get all of the brake fluid out of there, drop that down. You can see this is really loose. I can just move it around with the screwdriver, so I'm hoping it should just wipe off, but it's going to be a messy job. Yeah, look at that. It's all coming off quite nicely. But as you can see, it's pretty messy. And here we go, as with the previous parts, it's actually come out pretty nicely. There's a little bit more staining on this torso part. You can just about see the sort of little red marks where the plastic has been stained a bit by the paint. There's still a few little marks as well where the surface of the plastic has been damaged, you know, with it sort of rubbing together. But hopefully all of that will be hidden because it's all in the sort of shoulder joints, the head there, and on the sort of pelvis section. So that should all be sort of hidden by the time this is put that back together. I think that is good enough for the moment. I may do a little bit of a second pass with some lighter fluid and a cotton bud just to see if I can get any more of those marks off, but I think that's looking pretty nice. So now we can move on to the head, which is the bit I've been sort of holding off doing because I'm really not quite sure how I'm going to go about it, or really if it's going to work. I've got a smaller pot here which I'm going to put some of the brake fluid in. Now the problem with the head is, of course, it's all flocked and the paint goes right over the eyes and the lips. So what I'm planning to do is I don't want to submerge the whole head in the brake fluid because it may dissolve the glue that holds the flock on, but as you can see there is paint all in the flock as well. So I'm going to do a little test first. I've got my little handy tool here which is useful for sort of holding things, and I'm going to put some brake fluid in this pot and then just sort of submerge his face for the moment. So not the whole head, just the sort of worst area, and I'll put that in and leave it for an hour and we'll see what happens. It may be that all the flock comes off, but really there's nothing much else I can do because we've got to get this paint off. So let's try that. So I'm going to pour some of the brake fluid into this smaller pot like so, and now I can submerge his head. Let's just carefully do this. I'll try and do it so it's just his sort of face that's going in like that. You can already see that it's actually being soaked up by the hair, so it may be that this is a terrible mistake, but there's really no way else for me to do this, so let's just leave that as it is. In the meantime, I'm going to get on with restringing this body, which is something I've shown in quite a few videos, so I'm not going to cover it here. If you want to check out how to restring a vintage Action Man, then check out my videos on the deep sea diver or the sailor, or plenty of others. I've covered it a lot of times. But anyway, I'm going to get this body restrung so that it's ready and waiting if the head works. As you can see, I've now got the body restrung. It's looking remarkably good compared to how it was when it arrived here, all covered in red paint. It's looking really nice. There's still a few little marks, as you can see, but most of them have been hidden by the joints. The ones I was sort of mentioning on the shoulders there are hidden, but a little bit of sort of red paint residue is what I would expect on a toy that's had this much sort of damage done to it. Now, I've ordered some hands off of Modeller's Loft. I'm just waiting for those to turn up, but I do actually have some vintage arm hand pegs. Now, I didn't bother cleaning the ones that I took out of this figure, but I probably should, and I may do that as a future date. You can see they still have the red paint on them, but if you're any sort of Action Man fixer, your chances are you'll have a whole bag of bits like I do, which are just sort of spare parts for Action Man. So I'm going to use some that I already have that don't need cleaning, and these can just slot into the armholes, and I'll stick the hands on that I get from Modeller's Loft once they arrive. Now, I've only left this in for about 10 minutes and I thought I'd just have a quick check. So I've taken a cotton bud here and given the face a bit of a rub, and you can see that the paint is already coming off. So I'm actually going to take this downstairs quickly and just give it a wash in some hot soapy water and see if the paint will come out of the beard as well, because the nature of the flock is causing all of the sort of brake fluid to actually be soaked up around the back of the head. So I'm going to try and do this as quick as I can, so the glue may not end up getting sort of dissolved by the brake fluid, but it's certainly looking like quite a good start. It actually looks worse than he did to start with just because I've rubbed the paint around, but I think this may work. So let me go and give this a quick wash and then we'll stick it back in the brake fluid and see what happens. Right, there you go. That's just a quick wash in some hot soapy water. You can see that a large chunk of the paint has actually come off. The face is a little bit stained red, but I'm just amazed that it hasn't sort of taken the beard off, really. So you can see there's still paint around the bottom because that bit wasn't in the brake fluid. But I just want to try, before I put this back in, see if I can remove some of that staining from the face. So I've got some lighter fluid here and a cotton bud. I'm just going to put some lighter fluid on the cotton bud and see if I can sort of clean up this face a little bit more. See if much comes off it. It might be I'd have to try some other techniques to sort of get the staining out of this face, because it looks like he's really sunburnt at the moment. Yeah, it's taken a little bit off. I'm just amazed it's actually sort of made such a difference already. I wasn't expecting this face to be salvageable at all. I was thinking this was one that really was ready for the scrap heap. I well, that lighter fluid is making a difference. So I think that will be a future job then. So I'm going to carry on trying to remove the main part of the paint. So I'm going to submerge that back in the brake fluid, just the sort of neck part now and up to his ears. You can see there's some paint still in this sideburn. I managed to get the stuff out of the back that was actually sort of soaked in with brake fluid and came out when I washed it. So I'm hoping maybe some of this other paint will sort of shift as well as the brake fluid works. So let's get this in again and we'll see what happens in the next hour or so. And after a wash in some hot soapy water, you can see the face is starting to actually look pretty reasonable again. Now if you collect Mego dolls, you'll know that one of the problems you have with those is that over the years the faces go grey, and that's basically the sort of pigment used in the plastic being bleached. And the way to reverse that is to actually put the faces in a sort of red plasticated paint, and that the pigment from the red paint soaks into the skin, and that makes the plastic go more of a flesh colour again. And that's exactly what's happened here, but sort of in reverse. So over the years the paint has soaked into this face and sort of stained it red, so it looks a little bit more suntanned than it should do. If I hold up the figure here, you'll see that it's actually quite a lot more suntan. So I'm really not quite sure what the answer is to that. I probably could put some oxy spot cream on it and try and sort of bleach it back, but I have a feeling that won't work particularly well. So it may be just a case of leaving this in the sun for a long time, and that might sort of damage the new pigment in the surface and sort of stain it back again. So I think for the moment I'm actually going to leave this as a slightly suntanned face. I sort of like the look of him. I've managed to get most of the rest of the red off as well, so he looks half decent, and compared to how he started it's really quite a massive difference. I'm still going to do a little bit more cleaning because there's a few little spots of red left around, which I reckon with a bit of lighter fluid I should be able to sort of remove. And then I'm going to repair the little bits of the flock that need fixing, and also paint the eyebrows and sort of eyes back on where they've been slightly damaged. Now for the flock there is just a little bit of damage. You can see there's some sort of removed on his chin there, and a little bit sort of missing to the side of his moustache, and then this bit of hair is still a little bit red. I'm actually going to leave that because it sort of gives me a reminder of what he was. There's a few little sort of bits of red left around, and the flock I'll repair just with a little bit of flocking that I've done before. If you've watched my sailor restoration, you'll have seen how I did the flock fix on that, so I'm going to use the same process. I have a sort of blonde flock. It may be a little bit too light for this, but for just a tiny patch I think we'll get away with it. So let's do that little bit of flocking and see how he looks after that. Now previously for flocking I've used this stuff, which is burnt grass. You buy it for doing sort of dioramas or train sets, and you can buy quite a lot for very little amounts of money. And this burnt grass is a fairly good match for some sort of blondes of the Action Mans, and because this is such a tiny patch I think this should match reasonably well. If it's a little bit too light I can sort of darken it down with a bit of sort of paint afterwards, or just a bit of staining, but it's really just that little patch on the bottom of his chin there and a bit on his moustache. And I'm just going to use a little bit of Yoo-Hoo this time. Sometimes I use PVA, it depends on sort of the area that I've got to cover, but this stuff is sort of fine for little areas. You can see this is squirting out quite quickly this time. I've obviously squeezed the container, so let me just get a tissue there. I don't want this to squirt out sort of uncontrollably. Let's just get that under control. Right, now I'm just going to dab this sort of carefully on just a little bit around his chin there, and a very tiny amount there on his nose. And now I would have normally sort of used my little spray bottle thing to stick this on, but as this is such a small area I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way and just use a pair of tweezers just to dab it on. Sort of move it around till it looks reasonable. Do the same on the chin. As you can see, that's quite a good match. Sometimes it's hard to tell until you've actually sort of stuck this on whether it's going to match all right, but for little patches like this I find this works pretty well. There you go, it's not a bad little patch. Looks like I need a little bit more just around the side there. The last job to do on this face is just to repaint some of the sort of eye details. The eyes themselves actually don't look too bad, but the eyebrows, as always, are a little bit damaged. I'm just going to repaint those using some Humbrol acrylics. I've got here a number 33, which is a matte black, and it's normally the right sort of colour for these eyebrows. And it's a case of just going slowly and repainting just sort of little parts of it, and it should end up looking really nice. Okay, that's all that needed. Now if I do a quick comparison to how this guy turned up a few days ago, you'll see that he has made a remarkable recovery. He really doesn't look like the same Action Man figure. There's still a few sort of areas that show a little bit of wear, and there's a little bit of paint left, as I've said before, in the sort of the very fine sort of detailing and little sort of marks that are sort of in the arms there. But overall he really does look a whole lot better. Even his face is starting to look quite nice there. The sort of red tone is starting to sort of shift a little bit, and I'm hoping with time that will disappear completely. So let's get this guy dressed and into his final outfit. And here he is dressed in the adventurer outfit, which is what I would expect he would have come as originally if you'd bought him back in the 70s. So as you can see, it was really worth the effort getting this guy back up and running. It was quite a lot of work, but he's come out looking really nice and is a figure that I'd be happy to put on display here. And in fact, he is going to go on display here because this is a figure I do not have in my collection. So I need to say thank you to Joe Haynes, who very kindly sold me the remains of this Action Man, because as soon as I saw it, I knew it was a project I wanted to do. Also a big thank you to James Hardy from the Vintage Action Man Collectors Facebook page, and also the Vintage Action Man Collectors YouTube channel, who very kindly sorted out this outfit for me. I'll put links to both the Facebook page and his YouTube channel in my description. Please go and check those out, because they're both really worth looking at if you're a Action Man collector. The videos are amazing, and the Facebook page is very useful if you just want to collect bits and need to finish off your Action Man, because it's a great collectors community. So I hope this video has been of interest to you. It has been a major video and a really long one, probably the longest one I've ever done, but as you can see, it was a very complicated project. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.